The Arlington stage became a silent witness to an intensely emotional night that will not easily be forgotten. The atmosphere, previously filled with cheers and singing, suddenly shifted as emotions began to overwhelm Jimin and Jungkook. In front of thousands of ARMY filling the stadium with the glow of ARMY bombs, the two tried to hold onto their smiles, but in the end, their tears could no longer be hidden. The emotional moment took place as the concert approached its final section. Standing on stage, Jimin looked out at the sea of fans before him. The cheers echoing from all corners of the stadium made the atmosphere even more poignant. As if realizing that this night marked a significant moment in their journey, Jimin's expression gradually changed. The smile that had adorned his face began to fade. Jimin looked down, trying to keep his emotions in check. But as he looked back at ARMY, his eyes welled with tears. A few seconds later, he broke down in tears, drawing an immediate reaction from the crowd. The stadium's energy shifted in an instant. ARMY, who had been shouting enthusiastically, began chanting words of support for Jimin. Some fans were even moved to tears seeing their idol, who usually performs with boundless energy, finally show his emotional side on stage. Jungkook, standing nearby, stepped in to comfort him. He tried to offer strength to Jimin amidst the emotional atmosphere. However, the scene became even more touching when Jungkook himself began to struggle to hold back his tears. The two ultimately shared a simple yet deeply powerful moment. Jimin and Jungkook moved closer and embraced on stage. The hug felt like a form of silent support that needed no words, while the crying and shouts of ARMY continued to echo throughout the stadium. For the fans, those tears were not merely a fleeting release of emotion. They carried gratitude, exhaustion, happiness, and a deep realization of how much their long journey together with ARMY truly meant. After countless stages, long journeys, endless practice, and shared moments with fans, a night of farewell naturally brought a heavy emotional weight. The ocean of ARMY bombs filling Arlington became an unforgettable sight. Thousands of lights shimmered as fans kept showering Jimin and Jungkook with love. Rather than letting the atmosphere drift into pure sadness, ARMY filled the stadium with voices reassuring their idols that they would always stay by their side. Jimin tried to smile again several times, and Jungkook attempted to lighten the mood. Yet both of their eyes still held emotions that were hard to conceal. The moment made many fans feel as though they were not just watching a concert, but participating in a deeply personal farewell. Jimin and Jungkook's tears ultimately became one of the most memorable moments of that night in Arlington. Amidst the glittering stage lights and thousands of ARMY voices, the two proved that behind their status as megastars lies a profoundly human core. That night, no grand stage could rival the power of a single hug. No visual effect was more moving than a tear shed after such a long journey. Jimin and Jungkook may have tried to smile until the very end, but the raw emotion they showed only brought ARMY closer to them. In the end, the Arlington stage lights may have dimmed and the crowd's voices gradually faded. Yet, the warm embrace and tears of Jimin and Jungkook will remain an unforgettable memory. And as millions of ARMY rewatch the recordings of that night, one question will likely keep resurfacing. If this farewell alone was enough to make them cry so deeply, what kind of heartwarming surprise awaits when they meet ARMY on stage once again? As the concert drew closer to its end, Jimin still tried to keep a smile on his face. He occasionally waved at ARMY, trying to cherish every remaining second on the Arlington stage. However, a subtle shift in his expression slowly drew the audience's attention. Jimin, who had seemed so cheerful just moments before, suddenly fell silent for a few seconds. He bowed his head as if gathering his thoughts. A long breath was clearly visible as he tried to regain control of the feelings surging in his chest. He lifted his face once more and offered a smile to ARMY. But that smile looked different. There was a clear sense that he was trying extremely hard to stay strong in front of the fans. His eyes grew teary, and he repeatedly looked away. The sea of ARMY bombs in front of him seemed to make it even harder for Jimin to keep his guard up. The thousands of lights moving across the stadium served as a quiet reminder of the long path they had walked together. Jimin took another deep breath, but this time his emotions were becoming impossible to hide. A few seconds later, Jimin lowered his head again. He let out a faint smile, as if trying to reassure himself that everything was okay. But as he looked up at the crowd once more, tears finally streamed down his face. ARMY's reaction shifted instantly. The cheers echoing through the stadium grew increasingly emotional. Many fans chanted Jimin's name to comfort him, while others wept alongside him as they watched their idol struggle so hard to hold back his feelings. Jimin then tried to wipe away his tears while smiling again, making the moment even more bittersweet. He didn't want the night to be remembered only for its tears. Instead, he tried his best to give ARMY one last smile, even though his emotions could no longer be hidden. From the side of the stage, Jungkook watched Jimin's expression change. His focus gradually shifted to his bandmate upon realizing that Jimin was truly struggling to hold back his tears. Jungkook moving closer quickly became one of the most anticipated moments for the crowd. After seeing Jimin struggle, Jungkook's focus shifted entirely to him. Yet, Jungkook did not immediately display sadness. Instead, he tried to remain composed, as if wanting to act as a pillar of strength for Jimin amidst Arlington's increasingly emotional atmosphere. Jungkook stepped closer and offered a simple gesture to soothe Jimin. A faint smile remained on his face as he attempted to keep the mood from growing too heavy, as if silently reassuring Jimin that he didn't have to face the moment alone. Jimin tried to return the smile, but his eyes were still glistening with tears. Jungkook stayed close by his side, offering quiet support without needing to say a word. For ARMY watching from the stands or through recordings, that simple interaction felt profoundly touching. At first, Jungkook managed to maintain his composure. He smiled occasionally and looked out at the audience, trying to draw attention away from Jimin's sadness. But the longer he watched Jimin fight to control his emotions, the harder it became for Jungkook to pretend that he was fine. Jungkook took a long breath. The smile on his face gradually disappeared. He bowed his head for a few moments before looking back at Jimin, his expression now far more solemn. The sight of Jimin wiping away his tears seemed to be the breaking point for Jungkook's own composure. The one who had been trying to stay strong for his friend began to break down as well. His eyes welled up as he realized just how much this night truly meant. Still, Jungkook tried to hold on. He smiled once more and attempted to keep the atmosphere light so Jimin wouldn't sink further into sadness. He offered occasional gestures of encouragement, then turned back to face ARMY with an expression he tried hard to keep steady. Yet one thing could not be hidden. Jungkook's eyes began to reflect the exact same overwhelming emotion. When Jimin looked at him again with tear-filled eyes, Jungkook could no longer maintain his cheerful facade. He lowered his head and took a deep breath, trying to hold back feelings that were becoming impossible to suppress. The mood in the stadium grew even more emotional. ARMY, who had initially been focused on Jimin, began to realize that Jungkook was also on the brink of breaking down. The roaring chants softened into gentle calls of encouragement, while thousands of ARMY bombs continued to glow throughout Arlington. At that point, Jungkook was no longer just trying to comfort Jimin. He was also trying to keep himself together. Seeing Jimin cry seemed to bring all his own suppressed emotions to the surface. Finally, Jungkook stepped closer and chose to simply stand by Jimin's side. No words were needed. Their presence beside one another was enough to deliver a powerful message. There was a brief moment in Arlington that felt distinctly different from the rest of the night's whirlwind concert. As Jimin tried to manage his emotions and Jungkook stood near him, the stadium's noise gradually quieted down. The non-stop cheering seemed to disappear within seconds. Tens of thousands of ARMY filling the stadium seemed to collectively understand that something special was happening on stage. Nobody wanted to disrupt the moment with loud shouts. For a few brief seconds, all attention was anchored solely on Jimin and Jungkook. Jimin kept his head down while Jungkook remained by his side. Neither moved much as the light from the ARMY bombs filled the stands. The scene felt all the more powerful because it unfolded in total silence. Some fans covered their mouths or wiped away tears, while others held their ARMY bombs high without uttering a sound, as if the entire stadium had agreed to give the two BTS members space to take in these final moments without any pressure. Jimin then slowly lifted his head. A faint smile reappeared, but his emotion was still clearly visible. Jungkook tried to smile as well, though his expression was no longer as composed as before. The silence lasted only a few seconds, yet it felt much longer to those watching. There was no loud music to fill the air, nor any dominant cheers, just two figures on stage and thousands of eyes watching with deep affection. Then, as Jimin's emotions surfaced once more and Jungkook's composure began to slip further, a single voice broke from the crowd, quickly followed by others. In an instant, the silence erupted into a roar. ARMY began chanting Jimin and Jungkook's names once more. The sound was no longer just a concert cheer. It felt like a massive collective hug from tens of thousands of people wrapping around the two figures fighting back tears on stage.